All right, class, I'm going to give you an example of how to solve this division of fractions. We see that it says perform the operation and reduce the answer fully. That means you have to simplify. Make sure to express your answer as a simplified fraction. All right, so let's look and see what we have. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the problem. We see that this is negative 8/7 divided by 5/2. Make this a little bit bigger for us here. And so we have to remember what our rules said about dividing fractions. We know that when we divide fractions, we really are going to multiply by the reciprocal, right? And you guys remembered this as the keep, change, flip method. But again, I talk about this instead of as keep, change, flip. I talk about this as multiplying by the reciprocal. So let's think about it. We know that we're going to multiply this negative 8/7 by the reciprocal of 5/2. So I need to rewrite this problem. So we know that we're going to keep the negative 8/7 as negative 8/7. We are then going to multiply, that's what this change meant, change that division to multiplication. And then we are going to multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 5/2 is 2/5. And again, that's the flip part. We're taking this fraction and we're flipping it. So we have negative 8/7 times 2/5. Now, we have to remember what our rules said about multiplication and division. We know that if we're multiplying and they are different signs, it's always going to be negative. So I'm going to go ahead and tell myself that it might be important to write down that negative sign first. So we know that this is going to be a negative fraction. Now let's go through and multiply. 8 times 2 is 16. 7 times 5 is 35. So now we need to think, is there anything that we can do to simplify 16/35? So I'm going to start thinking about what all of the factors of 16 are. We know that it's 1 and 16, 2 and 8, and then we get to 8 and 2, and now we're back to 16 and 1. So I'm going to look and see if any of those will go into 35. Well, 2 doesn't go into 35. I know that 8 doesn't go into 35. And 16 doesn't go into 35. So we know that we are at simplest form right here. We know that this is negative 16/35. So let's go over here and type our answer in. We've got negative 16/35. And let's submit our answer and see how we did. Is that what you want? Yes, it is. Yeah, we did it. All right, let's do another example. So new problem. All right, so we have 3/10 times 2/9. So let's think a little bit about what we have here. We have 3/10 times 2/9. Now, if we look at this problem, we notice it's not division. It's already multiplication, which is really helpful because we know that if we're dealing with multiplication, there's nothing that we're going to have to change. There's nothing that we're going to have to flip. All we're having to do is just multiply. So again, we know that we're already at multiplication. So we're just going to multiply straight across. So 3 times 2, that's going to give me 6. 10 times 9 is going to give me 90. These were both positive numbers, and we know that if we have the same sign, it's going to be a positive product, right? So same sign, we know it's going to be positive. But we're not done yet. We need to look and see if this will simplify. So again, I'm going to think about the factors, the numbers that I know that multiply together to get 6, and think if any of those will go into 90. So I have 1 times 6 is 6, 2 times 3 is 6, then 3 times 2, and then 6 times 1. So we know that those are my factors of 6. So let's think about it. Will 2 go into 90? Well, yeah, it absolutely will. But could we maybe see if a larger number will go into it first? Well, sure. We could say, well, what about 3? Will 3 go into 90? I know 3 will go into 9, so it must be able to. So we're going to factor or simplify this. We know that we're going to divide the entire thing. So that means we're dividing the numerator and the denominator by the same thing. So 6 divided by 3 is going to give me 2. 90 divided by 3, well, what do we see? We see that 3 goes into 9 how many times? Well, 3 times, doesn't it? So we know that we have 2/30ths. But if we look at this, we have to say, I wonder, is there something else that we could factor out of this, right? So we have 2/30ths. And I bet a lot of us have been in this situation before where we factored it and we were like, yeah, we're done. But then we didn't get the right answer. We should always check and see if we could simplify it even further. Well, when we look at this, we certainly do know that we could factor something out. We know that 30 is an even number. And we know that with even numbers, they're always divisible by 2. So that means that we could simplify this again. We could divide by 2. We know that 2 divided by 2 is 1. And we know that 30 divided by 2 is 15. I know for a fact that's in simplest form. I have a 1 already in my numerator, so I know that there's nothing else that we could factor out. So we could type in our answer. We see that we have a positive 1/15. And let's check and see if we're right. Are you sure? We're sure. Yeah, we got it right. Hopefully this was helpful. It gave you a few examples. If you need some help, always, always, always ask.